I've heard of that. So what inspired you to make Durga?
I think it's, after having seen the second throne, you can see that, first of all, I grew up in India, and when you grow up in a country that is so dominantly patriarchal, you notice how just by being born a woman, a girl, your life is decided, like the kind of life you're going to have. So it's really an uphill battle. But for me, when I moved to Canada here and started film, I know I wanted to address the subject somehow. The other thing that's really dominant in India is the presence of religion in all forms. There's Hinduism, Islam, Christianity, all kinds of religion. I was surrounded by all of that. So I was also interested in how, when it came to religion, there were double standards in how men perceived the female form. And Durga is considered one of the most powerful Hindu goddesses. So she stands for this all-encompassing power, dominant even over the male gods. So I thought it would be really quite an interesting thing to look at, to see how this female power that's dominant in religion doesn't really translate into the day-to-day lives of people. So yeah, that was sort of the theme that I wanted to explore.
How do you think class structure and society in terms of women's rights?
Oh, that is just, that begins, that's where the discussion also begins. But what, I mean, of course you see it also from Life, Fly, Fly High. Class is a dominant reason for struggle, but, in terms of domestic violence, which is what I was looking at, it's interesting because even in the different class structures, this is very dominant. And in fact, if you come from the more upper classes, what happens is, because you're expected to be much more forthright and powerful and you're educated and independent, then the issue of domestic violence is actually hidden away. Women speak of it in whispers behind curtains, like they don't want to admit that even they, in spite of all of their class advantages, are being subject to the same kind of domestic violence. So yes, I feel that class plays a big role, but when it comes to domestic violence, everyone is touched by it. I think the difference is, of course, access. When you come from a more upper middle class, you have access to more avenues where people will listen to you. Whereas from the other class structures, with especially Dalit, which is the untouchables, it's just really, really a struggle. Yeah.
And since the 2012 Delhi rape case, and as women's rights and women's issues has kind of brought more to the mainstream attention in Indian society, do you think that this is a sign of progression, or how do you think that this kind of strange modern rise of India and the role of women play in this?
Yeah, I feel embarrassed to say how cynical I am, but it is really, yes, it's a lot more is being reported now. And the cynicism stems from the fact that a lot of the reporting that you see in India, first of all, the Indian media is problematic. It's corporate media that's looking for sensationalist story. And now that this is a dominant theme, yes, of course, there have been some laws and new rules and things set forward. So actually, when you speak about India and its laws, they are on paper extremely progressive. There's a law for everything. Mm-hmm. It's about how it's actually implemented, which everything falls apart, and you see that. With the case, yeah.
Held up for years.
Yeah, and just it's incredible how none of that translates. And so even this issue that stemmed from that 2012 case became such a mainstream story in the media. I feel it's even more than just about women's rights. It's really, the class comes back. It's really about class struggle. And I was discussing this with a few peers of mine, and she's also working. Actually, you may have seen the film The World Before Her. I don't know if you have. It's another incredible documentary from Canadian filmmaker Nisha Bahuja. And she was just saying that she was researching also this 2012 case. And she's talking about how, in the end, it's about the class struggle, because even for the men, they have such desperate realities. You look at life outside the 30% of the middle class that everyone else serves. You want to be heard. And so in some cases, rape is also being used as a tool to get attention. And what kind of attention, I don't know, you know. But I feel that we are far away from that change still, because it hasn't stopped. The 2012 case, again, people who critically look at that, they say, well, that is not, that's not news. It's happening every day in India. In this case, the victim happened to be from a privileged class. And so is that what took for the nation to pay attention? But so it's an ongoing discussion, and hopefully, more. I think it's also about individual women feeling empowered and finding places and structures to find that safe haven. That in itself is very, very minuscule, because the problem is systemic.
Even in this movie, the ability of her to overcome being from a lower class, B, doing a non-traditional sport. She's defying gender traditions and gender kind of societal structures throughout the movie by coming close. So how do you feel in terms of the relationship between your movie and this movie? What do you think the relationships are?
Well, I think it was well programmed. It's quite an honor to be paired with it. I think it lends itself well to some of the things I was hoping to address in the film. My film is, of course, a very different kind. It's like a visual poem. It's much more suggestive. So I wanted to address all these problems without, in some ways, the absence of an actual woman who's been abused or with a bruised or a burned face speaks to the silence of the subject. So it's nice then in Life, Life, Lie to just see that struggle so up close.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? I'll send out to the audience.
Everything was answered.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure to have you on stage. It was a pleasure to see you.
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for showing up.